Hey and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the brand new Carnevale Starter Set from TTCombat. Normally Carnevale miniatures are made from resin, but in this set TTCombat have moved over to plastic kit. So today we're going to unbox it, build the miniatures, create some custom bases and get everything painted and ready for the tabletop. Let's get into it. So let's start with a box. On the front we've got a look at the miniatures included in the set. And around the back, we can see everything that's packed inside. There's actually quite a lot included in this box. First up, we've got the dice needed to play the game, followed by all the miniature bases. And I've got a really pretty cool idea for these bases, which I'll get into a bit later. Next, we've got the cardboard tokens and the cardboard terrain, followed by the most interesting part in this set, the plastic sprue. Nice to see Carnevale moving into plastic, and looking at these sprues, there's some really nice detail on these models. We've also got the game cards, which include the miniature stats along with some information about the factions and their lore. There are also 2 scenario cards included, as well as some handy quick reference cards to help while you're actually playing the game with some of the rules. And finally we've got the rule book. It's a nice little book with some great artwork. It's going to be much easier to carry around than the much larger rulebook from the old starter set. And then of course we've got the cardboard terrain and the paper gaming mat. So pretty much everything you need to jump straight into the world of Carnevale. Now it's time to get these miniatures out of the box and see what they actually look like. The bases needed a little bit of cleanup, but after removing the tabs and giving everything a quick tidy up, they were ready to go. Overall, I was really impressed with these miniatures. The detail was great and they weren't too difficult to put together. A couple of them were a little bit more fiddly than others, but nothing too troublesome. One thing worth mentioning is the building instructions aren't included in the box. You'll need to head over to the TTCombat website and check them out on there. But once you've got those, putting the models together is pretty straightforward. And with all 8 miniatures built, it's time to turn my attention to the bases. For the bases, I wanted to do something that would fit a dark, decayed look I've planned for this project. I actually got the idea of these from the Grimdark compendium, so I'll leave a link in the description because that's where I saw this technique. I started with some 3mm cork, using it to create a raised section for the miniature to stand on. Then I grabbed some coffee stir sticks. After weathering the edges with a hobby knife, I then cut the coffee stir sticks in half to make them more of a miniature accurate board. And then after that was done, I then cut them into 10mm sections. From there, it was a case of rearranging the coffee stir sticks onto the cork, oversailing the edges and gluing everything in place with Mod Podge. I did leave some gaps in the decking where it looks like they were broken. I also weathered the edges of some of the boards to make it look like they snapped off rather than being cleanly cut. Once everything was dry, I used some texture paste to add more interest across the boards and covered all around the cork under the boards to give that sort of rotten, decayed mud ground look. The final thing for the bases is I super glued a couple of grass tufts into sort of where I want the water effect to make it feel more swampy. Then I glued the miniature down to the base and it's all ready for priming. To begin, I started by priming the miniatures black, and then I gave a zenithal highlight using deck tan to bring out all the details, as I'm going to be using speed paint just to get these tabletop ready. And then once I'd done that, I used a muddy green as a shadow colour, just so when the speed paint goes on, It makes the shadows more interesting. I did paint up all 8 miniatures, but rather than spend the rest of the video showing you every single paint step, I wanted to focus on one of the more interesting models. For this monstrous creature, I started off with warrior skin for the flesh. I wanted the skin to look old and weathered rather than bright and healthy. For the cloth, I went in with fire giant orange. I wanted these guys to have the feeling of prisoners who have been experimented on, so the orange gave them a really strong contrast against their grimier colours. Then I moved on to the stonework, using algae green, old cultist cloak. I blended these colours together to give the stone a much more weathered and decayed appearance. I also added a little fire giant orange around the chains to create some subtle rust staining. For the metal work, I used broadsword silver on the staples and chains. Then for the base, I mixed algae green with dark wood to tie everything together with the same decayed theme. For the bit of the base around the decked area, I used algae green and dark wood to create a swampy sort of watery look, as I want to add a bit of resin to it later on to make it actually look like water, but at least with the colour already there, I can then add the clear resin on top later on. I'm really happy with the way these turned out. The plastic miniatures have some great detail, and I think the weathered bases really help bring the whole look together, because painting the miniatures is only the beginning. With the decayed bases I've built, I need a board to match, and I've got a really cool idea for that. So if you want to see what I'm planning for the Carnevale board, make sure you're subscribed, because that's what I'll be working on the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.